Hi guys, are you like me? Are you a little sick of how good Gerald Undone is at everything? Just look at this. This is S-Log3 footage on my ZV-E1, and with one click, it now looks just like this. Perfectly color accurate because, of course, Gerald Undone makes a LUT and it is completely usable right out of the box. We need to talk about it. Of course, a big disclaimer, Gerald and I are actually friends. I'm pretty sure he considers me his best friend of all time. I consider him more of a casual work acquaintance. So let that bias factor in. I am rooting for Gerald. I want people to buy this LUT to make him stinking rich. He's also giving me a discount code which saves you a few bucks and will kick some money back at me. So we're all in this together to make Gerald Undone rich, but he deserves it because his colors are fantastic. When I was at his studio, I saw my handsome mug through his cameras and his color grading. I'm like, how you doing that? And he's like, oh, I got some news for you. I'm developing a LUT, and then you can do that in your studio. And that is what I'm doing now. Let me just show you how color accurate Gerald's LUT is. Here we are in Final Cut, and this is the log footage. Apply Gerald's LUT. Now I will draw a mask around my color checker, and look at that in the vector scope right there. The colors are all pointing exactly where they should. One click and you have accurate color representation. You can be as pretty as I am right now. So what I'm going to do in this video is show you Gerald's LUT. I will also compare it to the standard Sony LUT because I will be showing you this on a Sony camera. He also has it available for Lumix, for Canon, for Nikon, and DJI, and Fuji. So depending on your camera system, you are probably covered with Gerald's LUT. And I will also compare it to the Leeming LUT. That is something that I have been using for many years, recommended to me years ago by Gerald Undone, very coincidentally. Let's just jump back out to Handsome Alley and compare Gerald's LUT to the Sony LUT. And as you can see, side by side here, Gerald's is much more ready to use right out of the box. In fact, I don't have to do anything to this footage. It looks good right from the jump. The only thing I would add is a little bit of sharpening, because when you're using log footage, you aren't going to have any sharpening applied. You want to put a little bit of sharpening in post, whether you're using the Sony LUT, the Leeming LUT, or Gerald's LUT, anything that you are converting your log footage to Rec 709, add a little bit of sharpening to get a better result. Now, all the LUTs I am showing are conversion LUTs. They are not stylized LUTs. They're not here to give you an orange and teal look to make it look a certain way. They're here to give you accurate colors. A logarithmic curve is very difficult and tedious to adjust by hand, so it's nice to have a conversion LUT, or if you're using DaVinci Resolve, use the color space transform, and that'll solve the problem for you. Now let's do these next ones inside the studio, a nice controlled environment. We'll start with the Sony official LUT, and then we'll compare that to Gerald's LUT, and you see once again Gerald's is much more ready to go without any kind of color correction. So if you look at them side by side, once again the Sony LUT is quite a bit washed out compared to Gerald's, so I would have to manipulate that one a little bit more. When we compare the Undone LUT to the Leeming LUT, we see an even bigger contrast difference. The Leeming LUT is a bit flatter. Now, that is on purpose so that you can manipulate your footage as much as you want. But when you compare them side by side, once again, less tweaks needed with Gerald's LUT. Now, Paul Leeming has introduced, as of maybe about a year or two ago, a one-touch finish. And this is a much closer match to what Gerald is doing, in that with one click, you can get pretty usable footage. Once again, you should apply a little sharpening. Now, but the problem with the Leeming LUT versus Gerald's LUT for some people is the way you have to expose them. For Gerald, you will just expose your S-Log3 footage the way that Sony expects you to expose your S-Log3 footage, 41% gray. So with me, what I do is I set my zebras in my Sony camera to 41, and when I see lines, the zebra lines striped all over the middle gray, then I know it's exposed properly for not only Gerald's LUT, but for the Sony LUT. The Leeming LUT does it differently. It uses ETTR, expose to the right, and it's almost 2 stops over from what Sony recommends or Gerald's LUT. So you would have about 68 on your middle gray here. Now, the explanation for that Paul Leeming gives and all ETTR people give is that will give you the most dynamic range when it comes to your log footage. However, when you go to expose, you do have to go quite bright, and you have to either turn your lights way up or maybe bump your ISO in your camera depending on where you are to get that exposure, whereas Gerald just goes with the standard exposure, which a lot of people will be more used to. I know some people I've recommended the Leeming LUT to, they haven't been able to wrap their heads around exposing too brightly. The screen on their camera looks all blown out and they don't really jive with it, so they prefer more standard exposure, and that's what Gerald or the official Sony LUT will give you. Now you could use ETTR with Gerald's LUT as well and then just drag the exposure down before you apply your LUT, but I think it looks good straight out of camera when you expose it at 41. Personally, I love that Gerald's LUT is very usable right away. There is lots of contrast in the image once you apply the LUT, but if you want less contrast, he does provide a low contrast version as well. So it's kind of opposite to what the Leeming LUT provides. I find the Leeming LUT right away is low contrast, but Paul Leeming does provide a higher contrast one-touch finish LUT, whereas Gerald's standard LUT I think is more of a one-touch finish, but he does provide a lower contrast LUT in the package if you prefer it that way. Now, because I'm a fancy boy, I do like to do a little bit of tweaking in post to both the Leeming LUT or Gerald's Undone LUTs, and by the time I am finished with them, they look pretty much the same, so to me, it doesn't really make a difference. I can use either LUT. The Gerald LUT is a little more straightforward when it comes to my lighting, and it does make it a little bit easier, especially if I want to use official Sony LUTs or I want to use color space transform. I have already exposed my footage the way that the computer and the LUTs expect me to have exposed my footage, whereas with the Leeming LUT, it has overexposure, so if I'm not using the Leeming LUT, I have to really bring that exposure down to apply different LUTs and different color grades. The official Sony LUT is a free LUT. Most of the camera companies have an official LUT to go with their log footage that you can download for free from their website, or you can also just get it in your editor most of the time. The Undone LUTs, that's what Gerald is calling these. The Undone LUTs are paid LUTs, as are the Leeming LUTs. The Undone LUTs are a bit cheaper than the Leeming LUTs. They are from $19.99, depending on what you have, to $26.99, depending on your camera system for Gerald. And the Leeming LUT is a little more expensive at $39.99. But even at $40, a good conversion LUT is worth far more than that, in my not-so-humble opinion, because a logarithmic curve is not very easy to convert. So if you can get a LUT that gives you good, accurate colors as your starting point, then that is worth its weight in gold to me. So I think for $20 or $25, it's a no-brainer to get Gerald Undone level of color grading right there in your very own home. You too can look exactly like Gerald Undone. So go ahead, buy the LUT, use my discount code so he knows that I sent you, and then he will get that Mark Bennett, the Camera Crisis bump. Oh my goodness, he's going to be stinking rich by Christmas time. Hey, thanks for watching. We'll talk to you again soon. Okay, bye-bye.